Seth Godin, who is someone who's had a profound impact on my life, he was talking about fear, and his response was basically like, your job is not get rid of fear. Your job is to learn how to dance with it. If it's not going away, learn how to create tension with it. That actual stress is a gift. It's a training ground. It's a means by which you get stronger. It's a means by which you stay awake. It's a means by which you can actually do loving things for people, because you have a capacity to do things that most of your neighbors don't because they've not practiced. And what happens? You become dancers. You develop a capacity to do something you couldn't do before. And it's amazing. And it's why tension is good news if your interest is transformation. As humans, we prefer the path of least resistance. We crave convenience, the payoff without the price. But when our lives revolve around comfort, it doesn't deliver. Living in perpetual comfort leaves us weak and asleep. This podcast is an invitation to flip that script, to choose the unlikely path, to get the life you really want through voluntary discomfort. This is Strong and Awake. I'm Dane Sanders.
The difference between balance and tension. Like, so much of us want that like golden mean, that like perfect balance in life, when really I think oftentimes the growth comes with the tension rather than trying to maintain that balance. We were talking about this a little bit before we hit record, so I just wanted to bring people into that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to talk about. You're right, because I do think there's still a prevailing dream, fantasy that people have. Balance means, in a lot of people's minds, if you really break it down, serenity, right? And if you really get inquisitive, here's a little test you can offer anybody to find out what they mean when they say balance. Usually, if you say to them, I'm just curious, is your life stressful right now? And they'll say, yes. And I'll say, well, say more. And they'll talk about all these challenges they're up against, all these different things, and they're not lying. They're telling the truth. But when they say they're craving balance, just for fun and giggles, like remove the word balance and insert relief and see if they still have the same affirmative yes. Because I have a hunch when they say balance, what they really mean is they want relief from the stress in their life. And I respect that. I understand. I know what that feels like in my world and my vision, and my experience in my life. But let's be more honest with and clear in our words. What you're craving when you say balance is actually not balance. What you're craving is a relief from whatever pressure you're experiencing. And by the way, another way to check it is like, oh, you want more balance. So is there some area in your life we could add some more stress because you have too much serenity in that area? And no one says, oh, yes, please. I'd like more of that. Thanks. Again, it's an easy way to test what people actually mean when they say balance. So I think what we're talking about, in contrast with this kind of cultural ideal that I don't think is real, is tension. And one of my favorite examples of this, we had the opportunity, I was hosting a conference in Costa Mesa, California a number of years ago, and Seth Godin, who is someone who's had a profound impact on my life, was very gracious to actually join us for this event over audio. And it was this really cool moment where I was talking, and we'd given everybody one of Seth's new books, and I was the speaker at that moment, and I was talking about different things. I was like, wouldn't it be great if we could just ask the author some questions, and I threw out some question, and then like the voice of God over the PA, Seth starts talking back to us in real time. And people were like, is this a recording? What's going on? And then they realized, oh my gosh, this is really Seth. And it was a really fun moment. And in that conversation, and since then, I've heard him say it over and over again in a number of contexts. And I wonder if he said it for the first time in this moment, but who knows? Seth's a smart guy. He probably been saying it for years. But he was talking about fear. And the craving, it was a group of entrepreneurs who had gathered, and we were talking about how scary it is to be an entrepreneur, and especially in creative work. And his response was basically like, your job is not get rid of fear. Long dramatic pause. Your job is to learn how to dance with it. And it was a very kind of Sethism. But there's no doubt what he was talking about. What he was talking about was like, you can't get rid of the hard thing. But your job is to understand that, because it's hard, understand the nature of what hard things are, and learn how to, if you can't delete it, work with it, leverage it, use it as a pivot point to get more of what you want out of life. If it's not going away, learn how to create tension with it, compression, push it back against it. Not because you're going to beat it. It's a finite game. You want to play the infinite game. You want to get into a game where you can persist even as it persists, whether you prefer it or not. And in time, what you'll discover is you're going to prefer it. That actual stress is a gift. It's a training ground. It's a means by which you get stronger. It's a means by which you stay awake. It's a means by which you can actually do loving things for people because you have a capacity to do things that most of your neighbors don't because they've not practiced. So if you can find a way to dance with it, almost like tango partners dancing. Like, have you ever seen like really good tango? Like, like there's just it's amazing. Like, how do they know? And they're always like in lockstep in every kind of move. And one night of Dancing with the Stars, you know what I'm talking about. And it's just incredible. And I've never given much thought to it, but even the evolution of someone on Dancing with the Stars, when a non-professional is learning to dance with a professional, you can see the evolution. Like, you can take ground quickly in your capacity to create the tension I'm describing. And what happens? You become dancers. You develop a capacity to do something you couldn't do before. And it's amazing. And it's why tension is good news if your interest is transformation. And without it, there's nothing to push against. You're just kind of going with it. And you can't get stronger. I'm a CrossFit athlete. I go into the gym. I try to get up against that pull-up bar. If I don't learn how to live with the tension or create tension actively, I'm not gonna get above it. And that's the gold if your interest is to get stronger, to become the kind of person who can do that. So I think it's a really important question. It's relevant with all these things, like New Year's resolutions. Where's the tension? 75 hard, big leaps. I can see tension, but it's so short term. Hyper support. Where's the tension? Hope. Where's the tension? Like, you need tension. It's critical. And I think it's one of the quick ways to kind of litmus test one of the tools you're doing is like, okay, where's the tension? And if I can find tension, then there's a chance for growth. And is that tension going to persist in a way that I can sustain with it and grow over a lifetime? That's a different question. But you want that tension in play if you want growth.
Man, I mean, my mind is just like flooded with 1,000 metaphors. It's like the sailor, they're not hoping for no wind at all.
That's right.
They need the wind to move forward.
That's exactly
they need
right.
that.
That's exactly right.
Or think about, I'm teaching my son to ride a bike right now. And, it's almost easier to pedal faster and go long and hard, like in a straight line.
It is easier. Yes.
It versus sitting still, but like you become a better cyclist. You gain better balance when you can learn to go slow and fast and navigate that. So again, that tension is so important.
Yeah, I'm so glad you referenced the bike thing at the end, because there is a thing called balance, and it does exist in the world of humans, but it's a lag metric. It's not a lead metric. The lead metric is tension. The lag metric is, hey, look, they're balanced. But you don't go for balance. You go for tension, if that's what you're looking for.
Man, I think one of the ways that we can seek this relief, like you were saying, like people they don't want balance. They don't want tension. They want relief. One of the ways that we can do that is by moving the target, or as we talk about lowering the bar, or one of your favorite things to say, which is so helpful for me, is throw the dart and paint the bullseye around it. Like, I just love that, because I see that a lot in my own life, and where I have kind of seen that stagnation or that drift. But I think a lot of people do this, like with good intentions. Or seeking some of that relief, or looking for self-confidence, or whatever it is.
Well, let's get into whatever it is, because I do think it's so common, right? It's this phenomenon of, I think a lot of it is like, I don't want to look the fool. I don't want to be ashamed. I'm gonna, in this world, if you're not accomplishing something and you have proof of it, then where are you? and it's like I'm tired and I'm sick, and it'd be just so much easier to paint the bullseye. Or like, I remember when I was a kid, like my brother had a Rubik's Cube, and he was talking on the phone with his girlfriend, and I took his Rubik's Cube and took all the stickers off and put the stickers in the spot and showed my brother, look, I did it. And I did do something, but I didn't solve the Rubik's Cube. And it's striking to me how cheating and getting away with it, again, has this kind of, honestly, like kind of a short-term benefit, but it's one of those things where it's like, how is it that I'm decades older than that moment and I still remember cheating with the Rubik's Cube? Like that's sticking with me. Like that's the long-term impact of like, where we know at some level we didn't actually hit the bullseye. We didn't do the thing. We didn't even try to do the thing. We spent more energy in some cases painting the new dartboard than it would have taken to have just learned the algorithm to get the Rubik's Cube done. And I think, and by the way, I've since learned how to do the Rubik's Cube. And
hey, there we go.
And it's pretty darn fun. I have a hunch you probably can do it too. But it was very redemptive to go through the burden of trying to figure out how to do this whole thing. And I want to acknowledge, though, again, that because there's so many cultural pressures to perform, to show your work, to pretend like to have done a thing, whether it's your resume on LinkedIn or your the ways that you're characterizing, putting your best foot forward. I get why people do that, because the culture is built for that. But what we're talking about, we're trying to find vehicles to actually become the actual article, the real deal. And isn't that what everyone craves? Like to have others, and for yourself, more importantly, to say to yourself, like, I'm the real deal. And to be the genuine article. And my sense is that's what people are craving in their world. They don't have to be, the world's greatest in comparison to everybody else, but I want to be the most true me that's available. And the vehicle to get that can't just be maintaining appearances. It just can't. And so I think of folks like who, we have our dear friend, whose name you'll know, but I won't reference, just because I don't want to indict, and has confessed this dynamic where she was a remarkable athlete, and then fast forward to a different season in her life, and she called herself an athlete, and then if you looked at her behavior in her life, she was no longer an athlete. She used to be an athlete. She wasn't currently an athlete. And when invited to consider that as a possibility, it felt like it stung for a second, but it actually was the opening, the compression, the tension that invited her to become an athlete anew. Today, day one. And as part of our community, that's normal, right? Like we're on the hunt to find out where the gaps are in our lives so that we can begin to apply our modality in the direction of real transformation, to become the actual thing that we're craving. And I think that when you consider that particular option, I have kids. Like it's just such a tough world that we live in, that it appears as though some people are rewarded for maintaining appearances, for painting the dartboard. And they might be. Honestly, they might be. But it's still not worth it. Because they know deep down that this is what breeds that kind of low-level internal fractured confidence that it's so remarkably solvable so quickly, but it takes so much courage, I think, to be real with where are we actually today. And no matter, throw the dart, no matter where it lands, 10 feet from the board, now you got your plot point A, and you know your direction. Plot point B is 10 feet away, and now you have a practice. Now you get the work, the good work, the tension, the dancing with the fear, the finding the means by which we become. That is the magic. And do that in community, like you're doing it on your own, but doing that in the context of a collective. that's one of the most special things you could ever do in a lifetime, regardless of what your ambition is of who you want to become.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that tension between, the community solo effort is a really important one. And we'll certainly unpack it in another episode. But there's those two dynamics to the throwing the dart, and painting the bullseye around it. We do that almost to protect ourselves, or to kind of like reassure ourselves, or like, no, it's okay. Like, we did something. And, reassuring yourself and
Right.
seeking to not feel shame is not a bad thing.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I think it's good to be in an environment where you're not consistently shamed. I think that's a really good idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But so we don't only do that for others, maybe, like you're talking about, like our resumes and things like that, but we also do that for ourselves. But that does represent an interesting dynamic where we need to find that balance between kind of that. We don't want to be this lone ranger out there going solo. And we also don't want to be, just hitching our whatever to this caravan and not having any kind of individual agency and autonomy, or can't operate or survive solo on our own. Which is, I think, those two extremes. I come from a design and art background, and there's this whole ideal about the starving artist, the I'm an island unto myself, and it's almost celebrated, like you're saying, the Marlboro Man, like
Right.
this romantic idea of going solo. And then there's also this over-indexing on community. So like, how do we find that tension there? Again, we'll unpack this more, but I want a quick Dane Sanders hot take on that.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that some people are, first of all, wired for more individuated work versus collective work. The team player in junior high sports versus the skateboarder in junior high. And
Sure.
And some people are a little both, but whatever. But I think beyond our personalities and our preferences, there are atomic level units here. So the individual participating actively with the tension created is a means for that individual to grow. And then the environment that they do that in can have a profound impact on their ability to do that, the likelihood of that happening. You think of like cultural norms and inequalities among certain people groups in our world, and how I was listening to Adam Grant's new book about hidden possibilities recently, and he talks about these chess teams and how I forget Josh's last name, but the Searching for Bobby Fischer guy, he came from Dalton, I think. This was like they started. By the time you were in grade 1, you were doing a year of chess. And you learned the game of chess in kindergarten, and then by the time you were in 6th grade, they had these like grandmasters coming out of their schools over time, and they had won 3 national championships in a row. And the story is so remarkable because this other grandmaster, who happened to be a person of color, led a team from Harlem Junior High School 43. I think half a dozen African Americans, 1 Asian American, and 1, I don't know if it was Polynesian or something. And they won. They went to this big tournament and took on the big wigs. And the reason that story is interesting is because there are haves and have-nots in certain communities. It is easier. There's less to overcome in certain contexts, and we'd be naive to suggest that's not true. I'm a privileged man. Just because of the color of my skin, and there's days where I recognize how unequal that is, and it's not right. And there's other contexts where I don't have that privilege, and so all of those considerations aside, I think it's worth acknowledging them and then pausing and saying, at the end of the day, it's still an individual who is deciding what is going to happen. But the individuals that find the best tension, the best traction, the best chance of becoming, they tend to gather with other individuals who are also committed to those things, and they're doing them shoulder to shoulder. This is where the apprentice model is so powerful, right? Like when someone learns a trade, well, you could learn it from a book, kind of, but where you really want to learn it is shoulder to shoulder with another tradesperson, and learn the craft by doing. Learn the craft by being bad at it and committing to being bad at it for a time until you're not bad, until you find another part of that trade where you're going to be bad again. And then this is the cycle of getting better. So, and by the way, just a quick note on that. I do think folks who are listening to this, if this is compelling, they should go back and check out our Credo episode, because I think that can be really helpful to understand those stages of becoming as well. Mm-hmm. But it's a dance. For as long as philosophers have been thinking about these ideas, Rousseau and others, Locke and others talking about the individual and the collective, and there's a tension in that for sure. But the most helpful way I've thought about it up until now has been, it still begins with an individual looking for a community that are committed to are in the same direction of what they want. And as they align with that, there'll be people who are more skilled and less skilled, and each will progress as they stay in the practice of moving forward. And there is individual responsibility. And if you really want to give yourself your best shot out of it, do that with other individuals who are after the same thing. This is Season 1, Episode 8 of Strong and Awake, the Unlikely Path podcast. Men and Women of Discomfort is our membership community, and we are open to everyone. But keep in mind, our tagline is, "It's probably not for you." If we're wrong about that, or if you want to find out for yourself, you can find us at MWOD